I pulled Poppy's Corolla into the lot at 9:40 on a Thursday night. The parking lot was basically empty. Just a couple of cars scattered near the building and one truck way out by the road that probably belonged to someone who forgot it existed. I aimed for a spot under one of the lights. The bulb was buzzing loud enough I could hear it through the windshield. That high-pitched hum that gets into your teeth. I parked anyway. Figured better annoying than dark. The engine ticked when I shut it off. I sat there for a second. Home Depot. Overnight freight. $11 an hour. That was it. That was what being broke and back in Albuquerque had gotten me. I'd been in Phoenix for a year and a half doing landscaping work. Decent money, decent crew. Then the company lost a contract and half of us got cut in the same afternoon. I tried picking up day labor for a while, but it wasn't enough to cover rent. Poppy called and said I could stay with her until I got something steady. So I drove back with everything I owned in 2 duffel bags and a cardboard box. She didn't make it weird, didn't ask a lot of questions, just cleared space in the closet and handed me her car keys because she worked from home and I'd need to get around. I appreciated that. I also hated needing it. The job hunt took 3 weeks. I applied everywhere. Warehouses, kitchens, retail, whatever. Most places didn't call back. A couple interviewed me and then ghosted. Home Depot sent an offer 2 days after I applied. Overnight freight associate. 4 10-hour shifts a week, Thursday through Sunday. Start immediately. I took it. Didn't have a choice, really. I pulled the badge out of my pocket. Stiff plastic on a cheap lanyard, my name printed in all caps under the orange logo. Leroy Mitchell. The photo was from the orientation earlier that week. I looked tired in it. Still looked tired now. I clipped it on and got out. The air was cool. It was early April and the desert night still had a bite. I locked the car and started across the lot. The front entrance was all glass and light. Big orange signs in the windows advertising spring sales, mulch and grills and patio furniture. I walked in. It didn't feel like a store. Not the way it did during the day when I'd been in here buying stuff with Poppy. It felt like a warehouse. The registers up front were dark. The customer service desk was empty. No music playing. Just the hum of the overhead lights and the faint beeping of a forklift somewhere deep in the aisles. Tall steel shelves ran in rows that disappeared into the back. Bare concrete floors. Everything was bright and flat under the fluorescent glare. The whole place felt too big and too quiet at the same time. I stood there for a second trying to figure out where I was supposed to go. A guy in a vest walked past pushing a flatbed cart stacked with boxes. He didn't look at me. I headed toward the back. That's where they'd told me to go during orientation. Receiving area. Check in with the night supervisor. I walked through the main floor. Aisles of tools and paint and plumbing supplies. Everything neat and faced forward. No customers. No one at all except another guy on a forklift near the garden section. The receiving area was past lumber. Big metal doors and a concrete loading dock. Pallets stacked with shrink-wrapped freight. A couple of rolling cages stuffed with cardboard. It smelled like dust and diesel and something chemical I couldn't place. A woman was standing near one of the pallets with a scanner in her hand. She had dark hair pulled back tight and sharp eyes that landed on me the second I walked in. She wore a vest with a name tag. Rita. Leroy, she said. Not a question. Yeah. Good, you're on time. She clipped the scanner onto her belt and walked over. She moved fast. Everything about her felt fast. I'm Rita, night freight supervisor. You'll be with me most of the shift. Okay. Orientation covered the basics? Some. We'll go over the rest now. She turned and started walking. I followed. She didn't waste time, didn't ask how I was doing or if I had questions, just launched into it. Pallets come off the truck and stage here. She pointed at a taped-off section of floor near the big doors. You break them down by department. Lumber stays on the floor. Everything else gets worked to the aisles or stored in overhead. Cardboard gets broken down flat and goes in the baler. That's in the back corner past electrical. I nodded. Doors stay locked after 11, front and back. No one comes in. No one goes out without a manager override. Got it. You see something wrong, damaged product, spills, anything safety related, you radio it in. Don't try to handle it yourself. Okay. She kept going, talked about the freight schedule and the stocking carts and which aisles to prioritize. I tried to keep up, but she was rattling it off fast. Faster than I could really process. It felt less like training and more like she was trying to get through a checklist before something interrupted. I didn't ask why. Figured she was just busy. Around 10:30, she stopped mid-sentence and looked at me. "Come with me," she said. She led me out of receiving and down a side hallway I hadn't noticed before. Narrow, concrete walls painted beige, flickering light halfway down that neither of us mentioned. We passed a break room, empty, a couple of vending machines and a table with scratched-up chairs. She stopped at a door marked Training. "Inside," she said. I went in. It was a small room, white walls, a table and a few chairs, posters about workplace safety and lifting techniques, a water cooler in the corner that looked like it hadn't been used in months. Rita shut the door behind us. She reached into her vest pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Laminated. The edges were worn smooth like she'd been carrying it a while. She set it on the table in front of me. "This isn't official policy," she said. "It's not in the handbook. It's not something corporate knows about." I looked at the paper, didn't unfold it yet. "Then what is it?" "Survival habits," she said. She wasn't smiling, wasn't joking. Her voice was flat and serious in a way that made my stomach tighten a little. I picked up the sheet and unfolded it. It was a list. Printed in plain black text. No logos, no formatting, just numbered lines. I started reading. Rita watched me. Didn't say anything, just stood there with her arms crossed. The list was weird. Some of it made sense, some of it didn't. Rules about not going into certain aisles alone. About ignoring sounds from the overhead storage. About leaving the break room if the vending machines turned on by themselves. I read it twice. "What is this?" I asked. "Exactly what it says. These aren't real." "They are." I looked at her. She didn't blink. "You're serious?" "Yeah." I set the paper down. "This is some kind of hazing thing." "It's not." "Then what?" She leaned forward and tapped the laminated sheet. "You keep this on you, all night. You follow what it says. You don't test it. You don't get creative. You do what it tells you and you stay smart." I didn't know what to say. She was talking about it the way you talk about locking the doors or wearing a hard hat. Practical, necessary. "Rita, I don't care if you believe it," she said. Her voice got quieter, harder. "I care that you listen. You want to make it through your shift, you follow the list. That's it." I stared at her. She pulled the sheet back, folded it, and handed it to me. "Keep it in your pocket," she said. "Read it again if you need to. Don't show it to anyone else." I took it. The laminate was warm from her hand. "Why are you giving this to me?" She didn't answer right away, just looked at me with those sharp, tired eyes. "Because you're new," she said finally, "and new people don't know what to watch for." She opened the door. "Let's go. Truck's here in 20. She walked out. I stood there holding the folded paper. It was light, felt like nothing. I wasn't sure I believed any of it, but I put it in my pocket anyway. I stood there in the training room holding that folded sheet and figured I should probably read the thing again. Proper, this time. I unfolded it on the table. The laminate was warm from Rita's pocket, edges rounded smooth from handling. 5 rules total. Plain black text, no formatting. Someone had typed this up and laminated it and carried it around enough that the corners didn't cut anymore. Rule 1. Do not stock alone in aisles 22 through 26 after midnight. Wait for a partner or radio for backup. Rule 2. If you hear knocking from inside overhead storage, do not open the bay. Mark the location and report it to the supervisor on duty. Rule 3. The break room vending machines should remain dark when not in use. If they light up on their own, leave the room immediately and do not return for 30 minutes. Rule 4. If the intercom calls for water in any department, do not respond. Continue your task. Do not go to that department for the rest of the shift. Rule 5. At exactly 2:45 a.m., return to the break room regardless of your task status. Stay there until 3 a.m. Do not leave early. I read it twice. It sounded exactly like the kind of thing you'd make up to mess with the new guy. Creepy vending machines, mysterious knocking, a curfew at 2:45 in the morning. That was textbook hazing stuff. Except, Rita came back into the room while I was staring at Rule 4. She didn't say anything, just leaned over and tapped the line with her finger. "That one especially," she said. Her hand was shaking. Not a lot, just a tremor. The kind you get when you've had too much coffee, or you're cold, or you're trying really hard to keep something steady and your body won't cooperate. Rita didn't strike me as someone who shook. She'd been all business since I walked into receiving. Clipped sentences, fast explanations, zero patience for questions. Now her finger was pressed against the laminated sheet, and I could see the vibration traveling up through her wrist. "Garden, lumber, plumbing, paint," she said. "Doesn't matter which one. You hear the intercom ask for water, you stay exactly where you are." I looked up at her face. She wasn't smiling, wasn't watching to see if I'd laugh or call her out. She was just staring at that rule like she was reading it herself for the first time in a while and reminding herself why it mattered. "Okay," I said. She pulled her hand back and straightened up. The tremor smoothed out once her arm was at her side. Maybe I'd imagined it. I hadn't. "Truck's here," Rita said. She walked out without waiting for me to fold the sheet. I folded it anyway, tucked it into my front pocket where I could feel the rectangular edge press against my hip. Then I followed her back out to receiving. The truck was backed up to the loading dock with its rear door rolled open and pallets stacked floor to ceiling inside. 2 guys were already pulling them down with a pallet jack, rolling them onto the painted staging zone Rita had pointed out earlier. She grabbed a scanner off the charging station and started tagging items, checking numbers against something on the screen. I stood there for a second, then figured I should look busy. There was a pallet near the edge of the staging area, already unloaded, shrink wrap still intact, label on the side that said lighting. That seemed straightforward enough. I grabbed a box cutter from the supply rack mounted on the wall and went to work. The wrap peeled off in long sheets of plastic. Underneath were cartons of light bulbs, LEDs, soft white 60-watt equivalent, 40 boxes per pallet, stacked 5 high. I sliced through the bands, holding them together, and started sorting them onto a stock cart someone had left near the electrical aisle. It was easy work, repetitive, the kind of thing you could do without thinking too hard, which was good because I was still thinking about that list. Rule 4. Rita's hand shaking. I pulled another carton off the pallet and checked the label. Same product code. I set it on the cart. The intercom crackled at 11:53. I didn't know the exact time until later when I checked my phone, but it was right before midnight. Close enough that the building had gone quiet. The guys unloading the truck had finished and driven off. The dock doors were rolling shut. Just the hum of the overhead lights and the distant sound of someone running a baler in the back corner. Then the speaker above the door popped and a flat recorded voice said, "Garden department, please water." I almost laughed. It was so boring, so normal. The kind of thing you'd hear at a grocery store when someone needed a price check or a manager to aisle 7. Except it was 11:53 at night in a closed Home Depot and no one was here to water anything. I looked up from my pallet toward the main aisle. The racetrack, Rita had called it. The wide center corridor that ran the length of the building with all the department aisles branching off. Rita was standing at the far end near plumbing. She'd gone completely still. Not just stopped working. Frozen. Her scanner was hanging from her belt and both hands were at her sides, and she was staring straight down at the concrete floor in front of her like she'd dropped something and was tracking where it rolled. She didn't look toward Garden. Didn't pull her radio. Didn't call out to anyone. She just stood there. I waited for someone else to move. One of the other guys I'd seen earlier with the flatbed. Anyone. No one did. Rita stayed locked in place for maybe 10 seconds. Then she bent down, picked up her scanner, and went back to checking inventory like nothing had happened. I looked down at my pallet, at the box cutter in my hand, and the carton of light bulbs I'd been about to load. Rule 4. I set the carton on the cart and reached for the next one. My hands wanted to shake the way Rita's had, but I kept them busy. Cut the tape on another box, checked the label, stacked it. The plastic wrap crinkled loud enough that I could hear it over the HVAC, and it gave me something to focus on that wasn't the intercom, or the way Rita had looked at the floor, or the fact that no one was going to Garden. I didn't look up again, just kept working, one box after another. The cart filled up and I rolled it toward the lighting aisle and started downstocking. Shelves were half empty from the day shift. I matched product codes, slid boxes into place, broke down the empties, and stacked the cardboard flat on the bottom rack of the cart. Boring work. The kind of thing I'd done at every warehouse job I'd ever had. I stayed locked on it. By 12:40, the building had gone quiet in a way that felt different from before. The forklifts were back on their charging stations near receiving, plugged in and silent. The guys who'd been running them had moved to other tasks or disappeared into different aisles. The dock doors were fully closed. The only sound left was the HVAC, a low, steady hum that came from everywhere and nowhere, and the buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead. I finished downstocking the last of the bulbs and broke down the cardboard, flattened it, and stacked it on the cart. I was about to roll it back toward the boller when I heard footsteps coming up the racetrack. A guy rounded the corner into lighting, tall, skinny, maybe 19 or 20, sandy blonde hair that looked like he'd rolled out of bed and come straight here. He had an orange apron on and a stock cart in front of him loaded with boxes. He saw me and nodded. Hey, I said. He parked his cart at the far end of the aisle and started pulling boxes down. I couldn't see the labels from where I was standing, but he moved fast, scanning items with a handheld and shelving them without checking twice. I should have just left, taken my cardboard to the baler and found another pallet to work, but I didn't. I stood there with my hands on the cart handle, watching him work, and I didn't know why. He grabbed 3 boxes at once and stacked them on a top shelf, then turned and saw me still standing there. "You good?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just finishing up." "Cool." He went back to his cart. I started to push mine toward the main aisle. "Hey, wait," he said. I stopped. He walked over, hands in his apron pockets. Up close, I could see his name tag. Cooper. "You're new, right?" he asked. "First night." "Thought so. I'm Cooper." "Leroy." "Cool." He glanced back at his cart, then at me again. "So, what was that announcement about?" My stomach tightened. "What announcement?" I said. "The Garden one, 20 minutes ago." Cooper shrugged. "I was in the back running the baler and I heard it. Sounded weird. No one went, right?" I kept my face neutral. "I don't know. I was working." "Yeah, but you were right here." He gestured toward the racetrack. "You didn't see anyone head that way?" "Wasn't paying attention," I said. Cooper looked at me for a second. Not suspicious, just curious. The kind of look you give someone when you're trying to figure out if they're messing with you or if they genuinely didn't notice. "Weird," he said finally. I thought maybe it was some kind of system test or something, but usually they announce that stuff, like, this is a test of the emergency broadcast system or whatever. Maybe, I said. You think someone's supposed to actually go water the plants? No idea. He laughed. That'd be funny. Like, we're stocking shelves at midnight and someone's out there with a watering can. I didn't laugh. Cooper's smile faded a little. He shrugged again. Anyway, just thought it was weird. Yeah, I said. He went back to his cart and I pushed mine toward the baler. My pocket felt heavy, the folded laminated sheet pressing against my hip. I could feel the edges through the denim. Rule 4. Don't respond. At 1:08 in the morning, I was pushing an empty pallet jack back toward receiving. The thing rattled on the concrete, wheels squeaking every third rotation. I had my head down watching the floor because there wasn't much else to look at. I stepped over the painted arrows without thinking. Yellow ones. Directional markers for the forklifts during the day. They were all over the warehouse floor, pointing toward aisles, toward the loading dock, toward storage sections. I'd walked over dozens of them already tonight. Nobody had said anything about them. They were just paint. I kept going, wheels still squeaking, and pulled my phone out of my pocket to check the time. 1:10. And that's when the first rule slammed back into my head. Rule 1. Do not stock alone in aisles 22-26 after midnight without a partner or radio backup. I stopped walking. The pallet jack kept rolling forward a few inches from momentum before the handle jerked in my hands. I looked down at my feet. I was standing on bare concrete. Clean. No markings. But 3 feet ahead of me, a yellow arrow pointed straight down the center aisle toward the back corner of the store. And past that, another one, and another. I backed up, not fast, just steady. I planted both feet on the bare concrete between 2 arrows and stood there like an idiot, staring at the paint. They looked different now. I don't know how to explain it. They were still just yellow paint on gray concrete. Same width, same shape. But now they felt like tripwires, like if I stepped on one, something would know. I pulled the laminated sheet out of my pocket and unfolded it with one hand, keeping the other on the pallet jack handle. The rules were still there. Same 5. Same plain black text. Rule 1 didn't say anything about arrows. I read it twice to be sure. Aisles 22-26. After midnight. Partner or radio backup. That was it. Nothing about paint. Nothing about where to step or what to avoid on the floor. I folded the sheet back up and shoved it in my pocket, feeling stupid. It was just paint. I looked at the arrows again. They pointed toward receiving, toward the section I was already headed. I could walk around them if I wanted to, take the long way through plumbing and circle back. But that would add 5 minutes, and Rita had already told me to move the empty jacks to the charging station before 1:15 so the next shift could grab them. I stood there for probably 30 seconds doing nothing. Then I stepped to the side, off the bare concrete and onto a section with no markings at all. I pushed the pallet jack parallel to the arrows, staying a foot to the left of them, and kept going. The wheels still squeaked. The overhead lights still buzzed. Nothing happened. I made it to receiving and parked the jack near the charging station where 2 forklifts were already plugged in, their little green indicator lights blinking in the dark. I wiped my palms on my jeans. They were damp. I checked my phone again. 1:11. The overhead speakers clicked. It wasn't loud, just a soft mechanical sound, like someone clearing their throat before talking. I looked up at the nearest speaker mounted on the steel beam above the electrical aisle. The intercom came on. Leroy Mitchell. It dragged my name out. Wrong cadence. Too slow. The syllables stretched and pulled apart like taffy, each one landing a half second too late. I didn't answer. I stood next to the pallet jack with my hand still on the handle and my phone in my other hand, staring up at the speaker. The intercom didn't ask me to do anything, didn't say please report or come to or need it in, just my name, slow and flat and wrong. Then it cut off. The reach truck that had been beeping somewhere near the lumber section stopped mid-note. The sound just dropped. No fade, no trail. 1 second it was beeping in that high-pitched reverse warning tone, and the next second it was silent. I held my breath. Something rolled slowly across the floor. I heard it before I saw it. Wheels on concrete. Smooth and steady. Not fast, not slow, just constant. Like someone pushing a stock cart down an aisle at an even pace. But I didn't hear footsteps. I turned toward the sound, squinting into the main floor. The cart was somewhere past aisle 12, maybe 13. I couldn't see it from where I stood, just heard the wheels rolling. No voices, no radio chatter, no rustling of boxes being moved, just wheels. "Hey, Rita?" Cooper's voice came from behind me, casual and loud in the quiet. I spun around. He was standing near the end of aisle 9, hands in his apron pockets, head tilted toward the sound of the rolling cart. He had one foot on a painted arrow. Yellow, pointing straight down the aisle behind him. He wasn't looking at it. He was looking toward the sound, grinning a little, like he thought someone was messing with him. "That you?" he called out, waving one hand into the empty space between the shelves. Nobody answered. Cooper took another step forward, still on the arrow, and cupped his hands around his mouth. "Yo, if you're trying to freak me out, it's not gonna work." I opened my mouth to tell him to stop. The intercom clicked again. Leroy. Closer this time. The syllables landed heavier, like the speaker was right above my head instead of 20 feet away. My name sounded wet, drawn out, and sticky. I didn't move. Cooper froze mid-wave, his hands still up near his face. He turned slowly toward the nearest speaker, eyes wide, mouth open. "Dude," he said, "what the hell was that?" He stepped off the arrow, but it was too late. I felt it before I saw it. The air in the store shifted. Not temperature, not pressure, just something underneath it all, like the whole building took a breath and held it. The fluorescent lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. Cooper was still staring up at the speaker, arms dropping to his sides. He looked pale under the overhead glare, his sandy hair sticking up at odd angles. "Leroy," he said quietly. I didn't answer him. The rolling sound stopped, and the whole store started to warp around us. The aisle didn't go dark. That's the part I kept coming back to later. It didn't dim or flicker out or anything you'd expect. The lights stayed on, bright and steady, same fluorescent hum overhead. But the aisle stretched. I don't mean it looked longer. It was longer. Like someone grabbed the far end and pulled it away from me while I stood there. The shelves on either side stayed the same. Same height, same spacing, same orange signs hanging at eye level. But the distance between me and the end of the row just kept extending. 30 feet became 50, then 70. Then I couldn't see the back wall anymore. I tried to move, couldn't. My boots were planted on the concrete and my hand was locked around the pallet jack handle and my whole body felt like it had been nailed to the floor. Not paralyzed exactly, more like the air had solidified around me and I was stuck in it. I could still breathe. I could still blink. But I couldn't turn my head or lift my feet or let go of the handle. A low hum filled my ears. Not the HVAC, not the lights, something deeper. It vibrated in my chest and made my teeth ache and sat right at the edge of hearing where you can't tell if it's a sound or just pressure. I opened my mouth to say something, what, I don't know, and tasted metal on my tongue. The air smelled like wet soil after rain. That stopped me cold. We were inside. Concrete floors, steel shelves, cardboard and plastic and dust everywhere. There shouldn't have been any smell of dirt, let alone fresh dirt, the kind that's just been turned over and soaked through. But it was thick in my nose, earthy and clean and wrong. I looked at Cooper. He'd stopped joking. His hands were down at his sides and his mouth was half open, and he was staring past me at something over my left shoulder. His face had gone pale, the kind of bloodless white you see on people right before they pass out, and his eyes were locked on whatever was behind me. I wanted to turn around. Couldn't. The air wouldn't let me. Cooper didn't move either. He just stood there staring, his chest rising and falling too fast, his fingers twitching at his sides like he was trying to decide whether to run. His lips moved once, didn't make a sound, just shaped a word I couldn't read. Whatever he was looking at never fully showed itself. I felt it, though. A weight pressing against the back of my neck, a sense of something standing too close, breathing too quiet, waiting for me to acknowledge it. The hum in my ears got louder and the smell of wet dirt got stronger, and my ribs felt like they were being squeezed from the inside. Then everything snapped back. The fluorescent buzz returned, sharp and familiar and almost painful after the silence. The aisle was the right length again, 30 feet, same as it had always been, the back wall exactly where it should be. The hum cut off mid-note and the smell disappeared and I could move. I sucked in a breath and stumbled forward half a step, catching myself on the pallet jack handle. My hands were shaking. My pulse was hammering in my throat. I turned around fast, looking for whatever had been standing behind me. Nothing there. Just empty concrete and yellow arrows and the charging station with 2 forklifts plugged in, their indicator lights blinking green. I turned back toward Cooper. He was still standing. Same spot, same posture, same sandy blonde hair sticking up at odd angles. But his orange apron was tied backward. The strings were knotted across his front, tight and deliberate, like someone had dressed him while he wasn't paying attention. The apron itself hung wrong. The neck loop twisted, so the Home Depot logo sat off-center against his chest. He hadn't been wearing it that way before. I'd seen him 30 seconds ago, maybe a minute, and the apron had been on normal. Strings tied in back, logo facing forward. Now it was backward. Cooper looked down at himself, frowned, lifted one hand and touched the knot at his sternum, running his fingers over the loops like he was trying to figure out how they'd gotten there. "Did I?" He started, then stopped. His voice cracked halfway through and he cleared his throat. "Did I tie this?" I didn't answer. Didn't know what to say. Cooper kept rubbing his chest, his palm flat against the apron, pressing down hard like something under his skin itched. He moved his hand in slow circles, then scratched at his collarbone, then rubbed again. His breathing was still too fast. "I don't remember," he said quietly. "I don't remember doing that." I pulled out my phone. 1:18 a.m. We'd been standing here for less than 10 minutes. Felt like longer. Cooper scratched his chest again, harder this time, his nails dragging over the fabric. He looked at me with wide, pale eyes and opened his mouth like he wanted to ask me something. Then he closed it and looked away. I shoved my phone back in my pocket and walked past him without saying anything. My legs felt shaky, but they moved. I left the pallet jack at the charging station and headed toward receiving, keeping my eyes forward and my hands in my pockets so Cooper wouldn't see them trembling. By 1:30 a.m., Rita found me near the dock doors. She didn't ask if I was okay or what had happened or why I was standing there doing nothing. Just walked up with her scanner clipped to her belt and a flatbed cart behind her and told me to take a cardboard run. "Baler room," she said. "There's a pile near the compactor that needs clearing before 2. I nodded, took the cart, started pushing it toward the back hallway that led to the baler. Rita watched me go. I felt her eyes on my back the whole way down the aisle. But when I glanced over my shoulder, she'd already turned away and was scanning a pallet near the staging zone. The baler room was past electrical, down a side corridor with cinder block walls painted industrial beige and overhead lights spaced too far apart. The cart rattled on the uneven concrete. I passed the break room on my left, dark inside, vending machines off, table empty, and kept going. The loading dock bell rang once. I stopped. The cart rolled forward a few inches, and I grabbed the handle to steady it. The bell was mounted near the big roll-up door at the far end of the dock. It rang when delivery trucks pulled up and pressed the call button outside. Single ring meant someone was there. Double ring meant they were waiting. I stood in the hallway holding the cart handle and stared at the closed roll-up door. It was solid corrugated metal, painted gray, with a chain-operated lock mechanism on the right side. The bell housing was bolted to the wall above it, a dented metal box with a red light that wasn't lit. One ring. That was it. I waited, counted to 10. Nothing else happened. Probably a mistake. Maybe someone hit the button by accident. Maybe the wiring was bad and it rang on its own sometimes. That happened, right? Old buildings, old equipment, things malfunctioned. I started pushing the cart again. The rules were exaggerated. Had to be. Rita was careful, maybe overly careful, and she'd worked nights long enough to get paranoid about normal stuff. The intercom saying my name was creepy, sure, but it was probably a glitch. The aisle stretching was adrenaline or lack of sleep or my eyes playing tricks in bad lighting. Cooper's apron. He must have retied it himself and didn't remember because he was rattled. I almost believed it. 30 seconds later, the bell rang twice, sharp, fast, no gap between them. I froze. Rita's voice came from behind me, quiet and urgent. "Leroy, move." I turned. She was standing 10 feet back, both hands at her sides, her whole body rigid. Her face was blank, but her eyes were locked on the roll-up door and her jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping near her ear. She didn't say anything else, just jerked her head toward the door controls and motioned with one hand. I ran. Left the cart in the middle of the hallway and sprinted to the control panel mounted on the wall near the door. It was a metal box with a key slot and 2 buttons, one green, one red. The red one locked the door. I slammed my palm against it. The mechanism engaged with a heavy metallic clunk. The chain tightened and the door shuddered and a series of bolts slid into place along the top and bottom edges, locked, sealed. Nothing getting in or out without a manager override and a key. I stepped back, breathing hard. The bell rang again, twice, same rhythm, sharp and fast. But this time it didn't come from outside. It came from inside the building, right behind the metal. Rita moved fast. She crossed the 10 feet between us in maybe 3 steps and shoved something into my hand. I looked down. It was a receipt, crumpled, waxy, faded thermal print, the kind that comes out of the break room snack machine when you buy chips or a candy bar. I didn't ask where she got it or why she had it ready. Her hand was shaking again when she pulled back. "Key drop," she said. Her voice was flat. "Manager's office, now." I stared at her. "Go," she said. I went. The manager's office was past the training room, down the same beige hallway with the flickering light. I'd walked past it earlier that night when Rita brought me to see the list. The door had a small frosted window with assistant manager, stenciled in black letters, and a card reader mounted on the wall next to it. I didn't go inside. Rita didn't tell me to go inside. She said key drop. The box was bolted to the wall beside the door, metal, gray, about the size of a mailbox with a slot across the top and a hinged panel on the front that probably needed a key to open. I'd seen them before at other jobs. You drop your keys or paperwork or whatever at the end of your shift and management collects it later. I held the receipt between my fingers. It was warm from Rita's pocket. The print was too faded to read, but I could make out the vending machine code at the top. B7. Probably chips. The paper felt thin and breakable. Behind me, the bell rang again. Twice. Fast and sharp. I shoved the receipt through the slot. It went in smooth. No resistance. I heard it fall and hit the bottom of the box with a soft, papery sound that shouldn't have carried but did. The whole hallway was quiet enough that I could hear it land. The bell stopped. Just like that. Mid-ring. It didn't fade or trail off, it cut. I stood there with my hand still near the slot, waiting for it to start again. It didn't. The silence that replaced it felt worse. It wasn't the normal kind of quiet you get in a store at night when the forklifts stop and the HVAC cycles down. It was the kind of silence that sits on your chest, the kind that makes you feel like something just turned its head toward you and is deciding whether to move. I pulled my hand back. Nothing happened. I checked my phone. 1:53 a.m. Rita was gone when I got back to the hallway. The flatbed cart I'd left was still there, but she wasn't. I grabbed the handle and pushed it the rest of the way to the baler room, keeping my eyes on the roll-up door the whole time. It stayed shut. The chain stayed tight. The bell didn't ring. I ran the cardboard through the baler and got back to receiving by 2 o'clock. Cooper was near the time clock when I saw him next. He was standing with his hands in his apron pockets again, staring at the wall-mounted board that showed the shift schedule. His apron was still tied backward. He hadn't fixed it. "Bathroom," he said when he saw me. He didn't wait for me to respond. He just turned and started walking toward the back corner of the store where the customer restrooms were. I followed him. I didn't think about it. I just did. I didn't want to be alone, and I didn't trust what Cooper might do if he went off by himself. He didn't have the list. He didn't know the rules. And even if I told him, I wasn't sure he'd listen. He'd already stepped on the arrows. He'd already called out when the intercom said my name. He was the kind of guy who tested things. We cut through bath and kitchen. Aisle 17 was toilet seats and shower rods. Aisle 18 was vanity mirrors. I kept my eyes down. The mirrors lined both sides of the aisle. Small ones, big ones, ones with frames and ones without. Round, square, rectangular. Some were still boxed and shrink-wrapped on the shelves. Others were hanging on display hooks, angled slightly downward so customers could see themselves when they walked past. I didn't look up. I watched the floor. Yellow arrows, concrete seams, a flattened price sticker someone had stepped on. But I still caught the reflections. They were in my periphery, movement that didn't match our steps. I saw Cooper's legs in one mirror, but the reflection was ahead of where he actually was. In another one, I saw my own shoulder, but the angle was wrong. We were walking forward. The reflection was turning. I kept walking. I kept my eyes on the floor. Cooper stopped. I almost ran into him. I looked up, and he was standing in front of a big rectangular mirror, the kind you mount over a bathroom sink. It was tilted on its display hook so it caught the overhead lights and our faces. Cooper was staring into it. "That's wrong," he said. I grabbed his sleeve. "Don't." "No, look." He pointed at the glass. "It's wrong." I didn't want to look. I pulled on his sleeve, but he didn't move. He was locked in place, staring at himself. "It's too wide," he said. His voice was quiet, confused. My face, it's too wide. I looked. I didn't want to. I told myself not to, but I looked. Cooper's reflection stared back at us from the mirror. It looked normal to me. Same sandy hair, same pale skin, same bony cheeks. But Cooper was right about one thing. Something was off. Not his face, the space around him. The aisle behind him in the reflection stretched just slightly too far. The shelves were in the wrong place, and his apron. In the mirror, it was tied the right way, front-facing, logo-centered. I yanked his sleeve hard enough that he stumbled. "Move," I said. He moved. We got maybe 3 steps past the mirror when I heard it. A soft knock. Not loud, not violent. Just a single tap, like someone on the far side of the glass trying to get our attention. Cooper heard it too. He looked back over his shoulder, eyes wide, mouth open. I didn't let him stop. I shoved him forward and we kept walking. Fast, not running, but fast. Behind us, I heard it again. Another knock, then another. Slow and rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. We turned the corner into aisle 19 and the knocking stopped. The intercom clicked on when we were halfway back to receiving. "Garden department, please water." The voice was worse this time. Wetter. The words dragged and stuck together. Vowels stretched too long. Consonants that landed heavy and wrong. It sounded like someone speaking through a mouthful of something. I stopped walking. Cooper stopped next to me. We stood in the middle of the main aisle between paint and plumbing and listened to the announcement repeat. "Garden department, please water." I felt it then, a pull, not physical, not something I could point to or explain. But I felt it. An irrational, insistent pull toward the garden center, toward the big glass doors at the front of the store that led out to the outdoor section where they kept the soil and mulch and flats of flowers. I wanted to go. I didn't know why. There was no reason. But standing there, listening to that wet, distorted voice repeat the same request, I wanted to walk to the garden doors and open them and step outside. Cooper was staring at me. "You feel that?" he asked. I didn't answer. The intercom clicked off. The pull faded, slowly, like something letting go one finger at a time. I checked my phone. 2:17 a.m. Cooper scratched at his chest again, right where the apron strings were knotted. He looked pale, tired, scared. "I want to go home," he said. "Yeah," I said. We still had almost 6 hours left. The pull didn't fade all the way. It stayed in my chest, right under my ribs, like a fishhook tugging gently but constantly toward the front of the store, toward garden, toward those big glass doors with the crash bars and the outdoor section beyond. I stood there next to Cooper in the middle of the main aisle between paint and plumbing, and I wanted to go. Not because I had a reason, not because someone told me to. I just wanted to walk to the garden entrance, push the crash bar, step outside into the dark lot where the pallets of soil and mulch sat stacked under tarps. The wanting didn't make sense, and I knew it, but that didn't stop the pull. Cooper shifted beside me. His breathing sounded shallow. "You feel that?" he asked again. I didn't answer. I took one step forward. Rita came out from behind an end cap near the plumbing aisle so fast I didn't see her until she was right in front of me. She planted herself directly in my path, feet shoulder-width apart, arms out to her sides, not blocking me exactly, just standing there, solid and immovable, her sharp brown eyes locked on mine. "Stop," she said. I stopped. The pull didn't. Rita shifted half a step to the left when I swayed that direction. She moved again when I tilted right. She wasn't touching me, but her body filled the space between me and the front of the store. Every time I leaned toward garden, she repositioned. "Turn around," Rita said. Quiet, flat. "Walk back to receiving. Both of you." Cooper made a small sound in his throat. I glanced at him. His eyes were half closed, and his mouth hung open slightly. He looked like he was sleepwalking. Rita snapped her fingers twice, sharp and loud. "Now!" The sound cut through the pull just enough. I blinked hard, turned my shoulders away from the garden entrance, and forced myself to take one step back toward receiving, then another. Cooper followed, stumbling a little, his hands still in his apron pockets. Rita walked behind us the whole way. I could hear her boots on the concrete, steady and deliberate. She didn't say anything else. She just herded us like livestock back toward the dock doors and the charging station and the pallets of freight we were supposed to be working. When we reached receiving, the pull finally let go. My chest loosened. I could breathe all the way down again. Rita pointed at a pallet near the wall. "Stay here," she said. "Work that. Don't go anywhere else." I nodded. Cooper nodded too, though I wasn't sure he'd actually heard her. Rita walked away without looking back. At 3:20 a.m., the building sank into a deeper silence. I noticed it right away. The HVAC hum I'd been hearing all night, the constant low drone of the compressors and air handlers running through the ducts, cut off completely. The fluorescent lights kept buzzing, but even that sounded muffled now. Quieter. Like the whole store had been wrapped in something thick. I was stacking shop towels on a shelf in aisle 11, blue ones, 12 packs, supposed to go 3 rows deep. I had my hands full of shrink-wrapped plastic when the lights flickered. Once. I looked up. The overhead fluorescence dimmed for half a second, then came back. Twice. Longer this time. The whole aisle dropped into shadow before the lights stuttered back on. I set the towels down on the shelf and pulled the laminated sheet from my pocket. My hands were shaking enough that I had trouble unfolding it. I scanned the rules again, reading faster than I should have, looking for anything about lights. There. At the bottom. A line I'd skimmed over earlier and hadn't paid much attention to. If the lights flicker 3 times in a row, hold your breath until they steady. Do not inhale during the flicker. I folded the sheet and shoved it back in my pocket. The lights flickered a 3rd time. I sucked in a breath and held it. My lungs locked. The aisle went dark. Not completely. The emergency exit signs at the far ends stayed lit, glowing dull red in the blackness, but the fluorescents were gone. The whole store dropped into a pulsing, strobing darkness, on, off, like a heartbeat made of shadow. And in the spaces between the light, I saw it, a shape, tall and narrow, moving down the main aisle about 30 feet from where I stood. It followed the yellow arrows on the floor. Exactly. Its movements were smooth and deliberate, like the arrows were tracks designed specifically for it. It didn't waver, didn't hesitate, just glided forward, one painted arrow to the next. I couldn't make out details. The flickers were too fast, the darkness too thick, but I could see the outline. Long limbs, wrong proportions, a head that sat too high on the shoulders. My chest started to burn. I needed to breathe. I kept my mouth shut, and my lungs locked. The shape stopped. It was standing next to Cooper. Cooper was near the end of aisle 12, halfway through stocking a cart of plumbing fittings. He stood frozen with a box in his hands, staring straight ahead at nothing. His face was pale. His mouth hung open. The shape leaned close. I couldn't hear anything over the blood pounding in my ears, but I saw its head tilt down toward Cooper's ear. It looked like it was whispering, giving instructions, telling him something quiet and specific. Cooper's breathing hitched. I saw his chest jerk once, then stop completely. The lights flickered again. On, off, on. The shape was still there, bent over Cooper, its 2 long arms hanging at its sides. Off. My lungs screamed. I couldn't hold my breath any longer. The pressure in my chest felt like it was going to crack my ribs. The lights steadied. I inhaled hard, gasping, pulling air down into my lungs so fast it hurt. Cooper exhaled, but it wasn't a normal breath. It sounded thick, wrong, like something wet and heavy sliding out of his throat. Then he started walking. Not toward me, not toward receiving, toward the garden doors. His face was blank. His eyes were open but empty, staring straight ahead at nothing. His hands hung at his sides. His steps were even and mechanical, 1 foot in front of the other. No hesitation. Rita appeared from behind a stack of pallets and moved to intercept him. She stepped directly into his path, arms out, the same way she'd blocked me earlier. Cooper walked straight through her position, not around her, through, like she wasn't there, like she didn't exist. Rita stumbled back, her face going white. She tried again, stepping in front of him, putting her hands on his shoulders. Cooper kept walking. He didn't push her, didn't acknowledge her, just moved forward with steady, blank momentum. And I understood. The rules weren't designed to protect us from danger. They were designed to prevent us from becoming instruments of the store itself. I didn't think. I just ran. Down the main aisle, past electrical, past the break room, down the beige hallway with the flickering light. I sprinted to the manager's office and skidded to a stop in front of the key drop box bolted to the wall. The box had a hinged panel on the front, locked, but the metal was thin and the hinges were old. I grabbed the edge of the panel and yanked, hard. The hinges bent. The panel popped open with a metallic screech. Inside the box were 3 receipts, 2 sticky notes, and a key card on a lanyard. I grabbed the receipt on top, the one I'd shoved through the slot earlier. Waxy, faded, warm. The second I pulled it out, the dock bell rang, twice, fast, sharp. Then I heard it. Something heavy dragging across the concrete behind the roll-up door. Slow, deliberate, metal scraping on stone. I turned and ran back toward receiving, the receipt clutched in my fist. When I got there, Rita was standing near the charging station, her whole body rigid, her eyes locked on the far end of the store. Cooper was at the garden entrance, standing at the threshold, both hands raised to the crash bar. Rita saw me and jerked her head toward the key drop box. Her hands were shaking so hard I could see the tremor from 20 feet away. She pointed frantically back down the hallway. I understood. I turned and sprinted back to the manager's office. My boots slipped on the concrete and I nearly went down, but I caught myself on the wall and kept running. The key drop box was still open, the panel hanging crooked on its bent hinges. I shoved the receipt back through the slot. It fluttered down into the box and hit the bottom with a soft, papery sound. The dock bell cut off mid-ring. The dragging sound stopped. I ran back to receiving. Cooper was still standing at the garden doors, but his hands had dropped from the crash bar. He blinked once, twice, hard, like he was trying to clear something from his vision. Then he collapsed. He went down fast, his knees buckling, his whole body folding in on itself. He hit the concrete hard and gasped, loud, ragged, desperate, like someone breaking the surface after nearly drowning. I crossed the distance in 4 steps and dropped to my knees beside him. Rita was right behind me. Cooper was on his side, curled up, both hands pressed to his chest. His eyes were wide and wet. His breathing came in short, stuttering bursts. "You're okay," I said. I didn't know if it was true, but I said it anyway. Cooper didn't answer. He just kept gasping. I got my hands under his arms and pulled him upright. He didn't resist, but he didn't help either. His legs were shaking too hard to support his weight. Rita grabbed his other side and together we hauled him to his feet. We walked him back to receiving and sat him down on a pallet of drywall compound. He slumped forward with his elbows on his knees and his head in his hands. Rita looked at me. Her face was pale and her jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping in her cheek. "Stay here," she said. "All 3 of us. Don't move. Don't go anywhere. Not until sunrise." I nodded. We stayed. The garden doors rattled every few minutes, soft, rhythmic, like something testing the crash bar from the outside. None of us said anything. We just sat there and receiving under the fluorescent lights, surrounded by pallets of freight and empty carts and the smell of diesel and cardboard. Cooper kept his head in his hands. Rita stood near the charging station with her arms crossed, staring at the roll-up door. I sat on the concrete with my back against a pallet, the laminated sheet still in my pocket. At 6:02 a.m., the front doors unlocked with a heavy metallic click. The HVAC kicked back on. The compressors hummed to life. The normal sounds of the building flooded back in all at once. Footsteps, voices, a radio playing classic rock from somewhere near the registers. The day shift had arrived. I heard boots on concrete and looked up. A guy in a collared shirt and a manager's vest walked past the end of the aisle, scanning something on a tablet. His name tag read, Bodie Mills. He didn't look at us. Rita stood up straight and smoothed her vest. She walked over to me and held out her hand. I took it. She pulled me to my feet. "Your first night counts as your last," she said, quiet, flat, no emotion in her voice at all. I opened my mouth to argue, but she shook her head. "I'll do the paperwork myself," she said. "You'll still get paid. But you're done. You don't come back." I looked at Cooper. He was still sitting on the pallet, staring at the floor. "What about him?" I asked. "I'll handle it," Rita said. She walked away toward the manager's office. I stood there for a minute, watching her go. Then I pulled off my apron and dropped it on the nearest cart. I walked out through the front doors into the parking lot. The sun was just starting to come up, turning the sky pale gray and orange. The air was cold and clean. I could hear birds. I got in Poppy's Corolla, started the engine, and drove home. I never set foot in that Home Depot again.